When a billionaire taught a spoiled heiress the price of cruelty. The champagne glass shattered against the marble poolside before anyone could process what was happening. One moment, Elena Torres was balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres, navigating through the glittering crowd at the Meridian Estates Midsummer Gala. The next moment, she was airborne, arms flailing, her scream cut short by the shocking cold of chlorinated water closing over her head. If this story already has you hooked, pause right now and hit that like button. Subscribe to Broken Empire and turn on notifications because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever seen someone abuse their power like this. Now, let's dive into what happened when Elena surfaced from that pool. Elena broke through the water gasping, her white serving shirt now transparent and clinging to her skin, her black pants dragging her down like weights. Her ears rang with the sound of laughter. Not just a few chuckles but roaring, cackling laughter from at least 30 people surrounding the infinity pool. Through water-blurred vision, she saw them. Phones pointed at her like weapons, recording her humiliation for their entertainment. And standing at the pool's edge, doubled over with theatrical amusement, was Isabel Hartwick, daughter of real estate mogul Richard Hartwick. Oh my God, that was even better than I imagined. Isabel shrieked, her diamond-encrusted cocktail dress catching the fairy lights strung across the estate's terrace. Did you see her face? Someone please tell me you got that on video. Elena's survival instinct kicked in. She swam to the pool's edge, her server's shoes already sunk to the bottom, her name tag floating somewhere behind her. Her hands shook as she gripped the infinity edge, trying to pull herself up with what little dignity remained. But Isabel wasn't finished. She crouched down, her perfectly manicured hand pushing Elena's fingers away from the ledge. Not yet, Isabel said with a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. I think you need to apologize first. You bumped into me earlier, remember? Spilled champagne on my Louboutins. This is what happens when the help forgets their place. Elena's throat constricted. She hadn't bumped into anyone. Isabel had deliberately stuck her foot out while Elena was passing, then blamed her when a single drop of champagne splashed during Elena's attempt to avoid falling. But arguing was pointless. People like Isabel wrote their own version of reality, and people like Elena paid the price for existing in their world. I'm sorry, Elena managed, her voice barely audible over the continued laughter and music. Louder! Isabel commanded, standing up now, playing to her audience. I want everyone to hear how sorry you are for ruining my evening. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Not break, but crack. A fissure running through years of swallowed pride, endured insults, and suppressed rage. She thought about her daughter Lucia, only 6 years old, waiting at her grandmother's apartment. She thought about the extra shifts she'd picked up to afford Lucia's asthma medication. She thought about how she'd left her home country with nothing but hope and determination, how she'd cleaned houses and served drinks and smiled through disrespect because survival demanded it. But before Elena could force out another apology, before she could sacrifice one more piece of her soul to satisfy a bully's appetite, a voice cut through the chaos like a knife through silk. Step away from the pool. Now. The laughter died instantly. The command in those 4 words was absolute, carrying a weight that made even Isabel Hartwick freeze mid-gloat. Elena turned her head, water streaming from her hair, to see a man striding across the terrace with the confidence of someone who owned not just the ground beneath his feet, but the very air around him. He was tall, perhaps 50 years old, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. His navy suit was impeccable but understated, the kind of expensive that didn't need labels to announce its worth. Elena didn't recognize him, but everyone else clearly did. She watched as the crowd parted like the Red Sea, wealthy guests suddenly finding their shoes fascinating, their drinks urgently requiring attention. Mr. Blackwood. Isabel's voice had lost its triumphant edge, replaced by something that might have been nervousness. We were just having some fun. No harm done, right? No harm. Jonathan Blackwood repeated, each word measured and deliberate. He reached the pool's edge and extended his hand to Elena. "Take my hand." Elena hesitated, suddenly aware of her soaked appearance, her ruined uniform, the mascara she could feel running down her cheeks. But something in his eyes, a directness that saw her as a person rather than a spectacle, made her reach up. His grip was firm and steady as he pulled her from the water in one smooth motion. He immediately shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders, the expensive fabric worth more than her entire month's salary. "Thank you," Elena whispered, clutching the jacket closed with trembling hands. Jonathan didn't respond to her. Instead, he turned to face Isabel, and Elena watched the heiress actually take a step backward. "You pushed this woman into a pool," he stated flatly. "You humiliated her in front of dozens of witnesses. You filmed it. And then you prevented her from getting out while demanding an apology for an offense she didn't commit. Do I have the facts correct?" "It was just a joke," Isabel said, but her voice wavered. "Everyone knows servers are supposed to be able to take a joke. It's part of the job." "Is it?" Jonathan said, not a question but a statement loaded with dangerous quiet. He turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying across the terrace. "Let me tell you who I am for those who somehow don't know. My name is Jonathan Blackwood. As of 3 days ago, I am the new majority shareholder of Hartwick Enterprises. That means I effectively own this company, this estate, and every contract that keeps your lifestyles afloat." The silence that followed was so complete Elena could hear the pool filter humming. Richard Hartwick, Isabel's father, pushed through the crowd, his face the color of old newspaper. "Mr. Blackwood, there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Jonathan interrupted, his gaze never leaving Isabel, "is the one your daughter has about consequences. She seems to believe that wealth and privilege grant her the right to abuse people who work for a living. She seems to think that cruelty is entertainment. She seems to have forgotten that every person, regardless of their job or bank account, deserves basic human dignity." "Daddy, make him stop," Isabel whined, and Elena saw for the first time how young she actually was beneath the designer clothes and practiced cruelty. Young and spoiled and utterly unprepared for someone to say no. "I can't make him stop, Isabel," Richard said quietly, and the defeat in his voice was palpable. "Mr. Blackwood controls the company now. He controls everything." Jonathan finally looked at Richard. "Your daughter committed assault. She created a hostile environment. She abused a service worker who has no power to defend herself without risking her livelihood. I want her removed from this property immediately. I want her banned from every Hartwick property and event indefinitely. And I want a formal apology delivered in writing to this woman within 24 hours, or I will pursue legal action for assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "You can't be serious," Isabel exploded. "Over a stupid server? Do you know how many strings my father pulled to get this deal with you? Do you know how much money is at stake?" "I know exactly how much money is at stake," Jonathan replied. "Roughly $400 million. And I'm prepared to walk away from every penny if your family doesn't understand this very simple principle. Money doesn't buy you the right to treat people as less than human." Elena stood frozen, water still dripping from her clothes, unable to process what was happening. People like Jonathan Blackwood didn't defend people like her. They looked through her, around her, past her like she was furniture. But he wasn't looking through her. He'd positioned himself slightly in front of her, a physical barrier between her and the Hartwicks. Richard grabbed his daughter's arm. "Apologize. Right now." "I won't." Isabel yanked free, her face twisted with outrage. "She's nothing. She's nobody. Why is everyone acting like she matters?" "Because she does matter," Jonathan said, and something in his voice made Elena's eyes burn with fresh tears. "She matters as much as you do, as much as I do, as much as anyone here. And if you can't understand that, then you have no business operating in any sphere of influence." He turned to Richard. "You have a choice. Your daughter leaves now, accepts the consequences, and learns something valuable. Or I dissolve this partnership, tank your stock price, and ensure every business publication knows exactly why. You have 30 seconds to decide." Richard Harwick looked at his daughter, then at Jonathan, then at the crowd of witnesses who would absolutely talk about this at every social gathering for the next year. Elena saw the calculation in his eyes, the cold math of power and profit. Isabel, go to the car.
Now.
But Daddy.
Now.
Richard roared, and Elena flinched despite herself. Isabel's face crumpled, her mask of superiority finally cracking to reveal the spoiled child beneath. She fled across the terrace, her designer heels clicking furiously against the stone, leaving a trail of shocked murmurs in her wake. Jonathan watched her go, then turned his attention back to Elena. What's your name? Elena, she managed.
Elena Torres.
Elena, I need to ask you something important. Do you want to press charges? I have security footage from multiple angles. I have dozens of witnesses. If you want to pursue legal action, I will personally ensure you have the best legal representation available. Elena's mind reeled. Press charges? Against Isabel Harwick? The daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the state? I just want to go home to my daughter, she whispered. Jonathan nodded slowly. I understand. But I want you to know that you have power here. You have rights. And you have someone in your corner now. He pulled a business card from his wallet and pressed it into her hand. This is my personal number. I want you to call me tomorrow. Not for legal reasons necessarily. I have a proposition for you.
A proposition.
Elena repeated, confused and exhausted, and still shivering despite the warm summer air. I'm reorganizing the entire Harwick operation, Jonathan explained. Part of that reorganization includes creating a new position, Director of Employee Relations and Dignity in the Workplace. Someone who understands what it's like to be powerless in these environments. Someone who will ensure that what happened to you tonight never happens to anyone else. The salary is $95,000 annually with full benefits. I'd like you to consider taking that position. Elena's legs nearly gave out. $95,000. It was more than she'd made in the last 3 years combined. But I don't have qualifications. I didn't finish university. I've only worked service jobs since I came to this country. Your qualifications, Jonathan said firmly, are that you've lived the reality that most HR departments only theorize about. You know exactly what needs to change because you've experienced what's broken. That's worth more than any business degree. Why? Elena asked, the question breaking free before she could stop it. Why would you do this for me?
You don't know me.
Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the pool, then back to Elena. 25 years ago, I was a line cook in a hotel kitchen. One of the guests complained that his steak was overcooked. The head chef, trying to appease him, dragged me out of the kitchen and made me stand there while this man berated me for 10 minutes. Called me incompetent, stupid, worthless. The head chef didn't defend me. The hotel manager didn't defend me. Everyone just let it happen because the guest was wealthy and I was expendable. He met Elena's eyes directly. I swore that if I ever had the power to stop that from happening to someone else, I would. Tonight I had that power. And tomorrow, I'm hoping you'll help me create a system where people like you never have to choose between dignity and survival. Elena's tears finally spilled over, but they weren't tears of shame anymore. They were something else entirely. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. I'll call you, she promised. Tomorrow. Good, Jonathan said with a small smile. Now, let me have someone drive you home. And please keep the jacket. 6 months later, Elena sat in her new office on the 15th floor of Harwick Tower, reviewing incident reports from employees across the company's various properties. Her daughter Lucia's photo beamed at her from the desk, taken just last week at her new private school, her asthma under control thanks to the excellent health insurance Elena's new position provided. The walls of her office displayed her certificates from the HR management courses she'd completed, paid for entirely by the company. But more than the salary or benefits or education, what transformed Elena was the power to make change. She'd implemented anonymous reporting systems, mandatory respect training for all management, and zero-tolerance policies for abuse of service workers. 3 executives had already been terminated for violations. The message was clear. Wealth and position would no longer shield cruelty. There was a knock at her door, and Jonathan Blackwood entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, setting one on her desk. "I heard you've been working late all week." "The hotel merger is coming up," Elena explained. "I want to make sure the new properties understand our policies before integration." "You're doing exceptional work," Jonathan said. "I hope you know that." Elena smiled, thinking about the girl who'd emerged from that pool 6 months ago, humiliated and powerless. She thought about Isabel Hartwick, who according to social media had taken an extended trip to Europe after being effectively exiled from her social circle. She thought about all the Elenas out there still enduring what she'd escaped, still swallowing their dignity to survive. "I'm just getting started," Elena said. As for whether she ever saw Isabel again, that's a story for another time. But what matters is that Elena never forgot the feeling of that pool water closing over her head, the sound of cruel laughter, the moment she thought she'd have to accept humiliation as the price of employment. She never forgot, and she made sure that in every space she could influence, that moment would never happen to anyone else.
So here's what I want you to do right now.
If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you that everyone deserves dignity regardless of their job, smash that like button. Subscribe to Broken Empire because we tell stories about people who refuse to stay broken. Hit share and send this to someone who needs to remember their worth today. And drop a comment answering this. If you were Jonathan Blackwood and had the power to change one thing about how service workers are treated, what would it be? I read every single comment. What do you think Elena said to her daughter that night when she got home? Let me know your thoughts. Remember, your job doesn't define your value. Your humanity does. Thanks for watching.